Now, on the next page here, we've got an even more radical exposition of natural rights, and this is at the hands of Murray Rothbard. Now, Rothbard, in effect, extends Locke's analysis. His argument is that the only defensible philosophical position is 100% self-ownership. That there's no alternative. Rothbard starts with the principle of self-ownership, and he derives that in part indirectly by considering what would the alternatives be to 100% self-ownership. What other possible systems could there be? And if I can show that those systems either don't work or lead to absurdities or fail to answer the question as posed, then we're left with the only alternative, which would be 100% self-ownership. So he offers in his book, The Ethics of Liberty, 1982 or 3, he offers three possible alternatives. I think it's 82. He says, first of all, and this is just in a footnote, he says, suppose we had a system in which nobody owns anybody. Nobody owns himself or anybody else. What would be the result of a system like that? Well, again, if we consider the meaning of ownership in this sense as being exercising a range of control, well, then in that case, if nobody owns anybody, including himself, nobody could eat, nobody could breathe, because no one would have legitimate range of control over his own body. No one would have the permission, in effect, to do anything. So everybody would be dead. So this can't be right. The idea that no one should have range of control over anyone, including himself, can't possibly work. Secondly, everybody owns everyone, or maybe slightly more accurate, everybody owns a portion of everyone else. This would be a possible sort of communism of bodies. Everybody owns a portion of himself, but also owns a portion of every other person. All right, well, how's that going to work? Right? I mean, again, if ownership implies range of control, that would mean I have a range of control over every single other person. So nobody can actually do anything unless they've gotten my consent and the consent of everybody else. Well, again, this is obviously absurd. There's no way this could persist. And obviously, if you have a society of a whole lot of people, how could everybody keep tabs on everybody else and say, now, wait a minute, I haven't given my 4% vote on your body yet, so you're going to have to just stay and wait. It would be impractical, even if it could be done. So what would inevitably have to happen would be you'd have to have some sort of Kremlin-type Politburo situation where the Politburo will decide what to do with everybody's bodies, and then that would lead us into the third possibility, partial ownership of one group by another. So there's another possibility. Let's suppose we have a situation in which one group of people they all own themselves, but they also own another group of people in the society. Well, Rothbard has a couple arguments against this, but one of them is this fails to answer what it is we're searching for. We're searching for a universal ethic for man, for mankind, that would apply to man qua man. Now, if you're going to say that, well, the correct ethic would be that people with red hair get to dominate people with black hair, that's not an ethic for man. That's an ethic for one group of people. We're looking for a universal standard that would apply to everybody. So this doesn't even meet the definition of what we're seeking. So this is excluded. So according to Rothbard, the only alternative that's left is self-ownership, is 100% self-ownership of each person by himself. Now, if you notice immediately, I think, the extremely radical political implications of Rothbard's conclusion, which would be, if there is such a thing as if we have 100% self-ownership, then, according to him, any form of aggression against the individual is morally unjustifiable, including taxation. That would be morally unjustifiable because that would be a kind of theft from one group preying upon another, and that would be a violation of the self-ownership of the people being taxed. And he would say that there has to be one standard of morality that is universally applied to all people. And one thing that would fail that test is, I can steal, but you can't. I can hit you, but you can't hit me. That type of ethic is not universal. And so therefore, if a government is going to try to exercise a non-universal ethic and say, well, we can take, but you can't, or we can expropriate you in order to protect you from expropriators, This is not a universal ethic, and it violates the tenets of self-ownership. So that's why Rothbard rejects the state altogether. He moves beyond the minimal state of Locke and Nozick to say that even the minimal state violates rights and therefore can't be justified. Now, oh wow, hey, yikes! All right, well, so Hans Hoppe, I think, although he gets a lot of criticism, I think unjustifiably, I think he's an extremely original and important thinker for people to read. Well, one thing Hoppe tries to do, and this is probably one of the most controversial things he's done. I think he's done a lot of great stuff in economics. He's done great stuff in philosophy. Probably the most controversial thing he's tried to do is something called argumentation ethics. And the groundwork for argumentation ethics is the recognition of the following things. And I've described these things as scarcity and its implications. We're living in a world of scarce resources, in the sense that we do not have enough resources and resources would include labor power as well, for all of us simultaneously to pursue all the ends we may want to pursue. We are inevitably faced with scarcity. Because resources are scarce, they're not superabundant like air. Supposing we have clean air. Air is so superabundant, we don't argue about it. We don't allocate property rights to air in most cases. Because it's so superabundant, no one argues about it or cares. But most goods do not exist in superabundance. They're scarce. And because scarce resources exist, and because my exercise of a range of control over one thing precludes your simultaneous exercise of a range of control over that thing, the potential for conflict exists by virtue of the existence of scarcity. So if we want to live peacefully in society, given the possibility of conflict that scarcity introduces, we need a peaceful, objective, conflict-avoiding system of property ownership that would assign these scarce resources to some owner who can exercise a range of control over them. So peaceful, well, that's obvious. Again, if we're looking to avoid conflict, we need peace. But also objective. Whatever it is that links me with the good that I exercise control over needs to be something that can be recognized by everyone, that is objective. It can't just be, I've got a feeling that I should own such and such. Well, you might have the feeling that you should own it, and that doesn't avoid conflict at all. So it needs to be an objective link between the person and the object owned in order to avoid conflict. So, the system that we're looking for that will reduce conflicts is a system that is going to specify which individuals may exercise enforceable control over which things. Because if you have a right, it doesn't mean anything if you're not allowed to enforce it. I mean, you can talk all day long about your property rights while the government is bulldozing your house. So the ability to enforce the right is important. So this is what rights theory and interpersonal ethics are seeking to address. Now, I think it's also important as a preliminary step to observe that everybody, even thieves, even communists, even fascists, everybody presupposes a theory of rights and ownership. Everybody does. Because the communists are not saying nobody should own anything. They're not saying no one should exercise a range of control over anything. They're saying these people should exercise that range of control, not these exploiters. A thief is saying, I should have control over these goods because I'm big and strong and I've got a gun and I can take them from you, and you shouldn't. So in effect, he also has a theory. It's a crummy theory, but he does believe, he's not saying no one should exercise control over anything. Everybody's got some theory as to who should control property. Bureaucrats, governments, thieves, whatever, free individuals. Everybody's got some understanding of how ownership should be conferred. But what's controversial about Hans Hoppe's argumentation ethics is he's arguing that only the libertarian theory of property can actually be rationally justified. You can have a million theories. This is the only one that can be rationally justified in an argument.